that people are interacting with their recycling. And we know that we'll be able to give them something there that's tangible and that they can hopefully hold and remember. And so think about educating at the curb with both an annual info card mailer, curbside feedback, and a top issue mailer. If you are tagging and see what's out there in those carts, what a common contaminant is, focusing a top issue mailer on that is excellent. If not, you can always chat with your MRF and find out what some top contaminants are that are coming into the MRF for you to focus on. Really important though, when you think about that accepted materials list, this might be a little complicated for your resident. So let's try to focus on something that looks more like this: photos and words, and also use materials that a resident can relate to. Then we have outreach, and in so many cases you see outreach and education together, but in this case I want you to think about them as different things. So when you have outreach with a resident, it's really more direct. It's a time that you're speaking to them at an event. It's when you're doing a presentation at a neighborhood association, or it could be you doing a local TV, daytime television interview and through the media. And so in all those ways, you can be outreaching to your residents. And I want to bring in this example of drop-off locations. A lot of us don't have curbside programs, and we do have drop-off. So here's a way you can really blend your education and your outreach. So education can happen through signage at that drop-off location, and it can also you can also have outreach through personalized feedback. So if you have staff on the location, that's great. Have something in hand for them to be able to provide the residents for feedback. And if you don't have staff, that works too. Maybe you want to host an annual event at the location where you do have staff on site to provide information. Maybe it can coincide with a hazardous waste collection or something of that nature. But really think about how you can blend both your education and outreach as well. And another way that we can reach our residents is through harmonized communication. And this can really happen on a regional scale. And this is to me, a new and exciting way of reaching folks. And I see so much collaboration happening around this, but don't let me bore you with the details. Let me bring in Stephanie Watson, as she is an expert who's actually making this happen right now in the Tampa Bay area, and let her tell you a little bit about regional harmonized communication. So take it away, Stephanie.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so while you see my name up there in the large fonts, I do have the partners included. It's important to recognize them because without them, this presentation could not take place. Now, this seems like such an obvious goal. We should all work together, right? But unfortunately, it really does not happen that often. And I'm specifically talking about local governments working together in a coordinated way to achieve one goal, which is recycling education and outreach. But before I get into the nitty-gritty, I wanted to give a little background on our area. Okay, so the Tampa Bay area is comprised of Pinellas and Hillsborough County, and we have a population of about 2.5 million people combined. And while we all live in different areas with water around us, we're luckily connected by bridges, and therefore many residents live, work, and play across Tampa Bay. Most important for you to know about our area is that we have amazing breweries and a non-traditional recycling rate of around 82%, and we have 2 local material recovery facilities. A substantial portion of our recycling rate comes from our waste to energy credits. Under Florida Department of Environmental Protection rules, local governments get 1 ton of recycling credit for each megawatt hour of electricity produced from municipal solid waste. Once a municipality reaches that traditional recycling rate of over 50%, then the waste to energy credits increase to 1.25 tons of recycling credit for each megawatt hour of electricity produced from municipal solid waste. And that's how we got to the 82%. And so while Tampa Bay has distinct features, my hope is that you can apply the basic principles of this campaign to your situation. So while we already had a high recycling rate in the Tampa Bay area, and we're doing a pretty good job with our recycling programs, we have many events happening in the region, and we have really robust event recycling already. We're recycling in our municipal buildings and our parks and beaches. We're using these events and amenities as a platform for recycling outreach. We're trying to capture the residents' attention in any way we can, including dressing up in plastic bags from head to toe. You'll see Bag Monster there. The missing link was that while we all had strong recycling outreach programs, they were not necessarily consistent and concise across the region. And luckily, through some casual conversations amongst the recycling coordinators for these local governments, a light bulb went off, and we decided that we really needed to start working together to create that clear and consistent message. So we formed an official regional recycling partnership known as Tampa Bay Recycles, which includes 2 of the biggest cities and counties in our region. Now, all of us in this partnership, we have different programs and focuses. For example, in Hillsborough County, it's a relatively rural area. They have solid waste collection, and it's contracted out for garbage and recycling service. And their main challenge in Hillsborough was to reduce contamination and reach residents in a concerted way. As a rural area, they don't have many events taking place with that opportunity for direct conversation with residents. In the city of Tampa, it's a highly urban area. They have municipal garbage and solid waste collection, garbage and recycling collection. They also have the established program. Carted recycling began in 2012, but they had really high contamination. In Pinellas County, we have drop-off location only, collection only, but we're responsible for spearheading recycling education in the unincorporated area, which is about 260,000 people, as well as coordinating messaging among our 24 municipalities. Just one municipality alone has about 280,000 people. So our challenge in Pinellas County was to create a consistent message. And in the city of St. Petersburg, they have municipal collection. They're a relatively newer program. The challenge wasn't so much with contamination, but just creating awareness and participation. So while we all have different programs and are positioned differently, we all had a goal of education specifically around reduced contamination through proper participation. So part of the reason that we thought a regional effort would work well is that we're all operating within the same MRF shed. What's a MRF shed, you ask? A MRF shed is very similar to a watershed in that water in an area like rivers all flow to the same water body. In this case, all the recyclable material in our region flow to mainly 2 MRFs. Therefore, what one local government does in the MRF shed can impact the other local governments. For example, recycling contamination coming from Pinellas County can shut down a MRF and make it more challenging to successfully recycle materials, say, coming from City of Tampa. And this reduces the efficiency of the MRF and the quality of material being produced. And making the local MRF less viable for all participants, that's a cost we all have to share. The cleaner the material, the better for all, including the processors, of course. So in light of the fact that all of our material was going to the same places, we can have the same guidelines and therefore share the same message. So even if our material varies slightly in our individual contracts, ultimately the MRF knows the material that they're going to be able to process and sell. Before we could get started on the regional recycling partnership, we had to get our respective departments and marketing communication teams on board. For some of you, you may be that team, in which case the approval process could be easier for you. But in this case, we all have separate departments. And I'm sure as many of you are aware, it can be hard to get 2 different municipalities to agree on something. And in many cases, they're concerned about preserving their identity. But we sold it to our departments and teams in a few ways. For example, it would maximize our return on investment and extend our reach. Since we were already spending money on things like billboards and radio ads, why not share in those costs and have a message that applies to everyone? We also decided that we would create a blended and consistent style that was a brand for the campaign. That way we'd still have an identity, but then again, it would apply to all of us. And ultimately, we explained the concept of the MERS shed and why it was so important. We also decided we wanted to do this without an interlocal agreement, just to make things a little less complicated. Once we had the green light, we got started choosing to focus not only on a consistent message, but a singular message or issue, like Alita alluded to with the example of the milk container, one clear message. So we chose to start by focusing on the greatest issue that was facing a lot of our programs, eliminating plastic bags and bag recyclables from our stream. And that campaign began in March of 2017. We had a second campaign that extended the message to all tanglers, which includes plastic bags, ropes, cords, and hoses. That campaign began in July of 2018, and I'll share with you some of the stats on that campaign in just a little bit. We decided to get a little bit graphic and use a photo from inside the MRF. We knew this might have been a little bit of a reach for those that were looking at it, but we hoped that in the context they would understand what was going on. We knew the photo from working with our outreach and talking to people about it had been really popular, so we decided to go for it. In these campaigns, we've tried really hard to reach folks through every possible outlet, including print ads, digital billboards, radio ads, bus wraps, social media, and as well as a joint news release. And one of the key pieces of the regional campaign was to have a single landing webpage to direct residents to learn more information. Instead of closing out our advertisements and radio ads with, say, visit Hillsborough County Government and a long URL, we directed people to check out tampabayrecycles.org. It was much easier for people to remember. And once on that landing page, residents could find their respective local governments and visit their pages. So the goal again in the landing page was to simply reinforce the primary messages of the campaign, and it was also made available in English and Spanish. In addition to having a consistent landing web page, we also decided to have a consistent hashtag for social media and discovered quickly we needed consistent standard responses for our social media inquiries because they came flying at us. While these messages did not seem positive, shown on the screen, having these responses ready to go for our communications team to rapidly respond allowed a really robust conversation to take place around recycling, and also provided us insight to what the community's thoughts and perceptions were about recycling. Earned media is free media. So your brand earns free media when people start talking about you, usually in a good way. And according to Nielsen, earned media is the most trusted form of advertising out there. So this campaign was picked up by every major media outlet and morning TV show in Tampa Bay. So for our area, it was Good Morning Tampa Bay, ABC Action News, and Earthwatch on WTVT. And we also, Hillsborough County and Pinellas County, prepared what we call a joint news release. So one of the municipalities took a stab at drafting it, shared it with the other municipality. They put their own sort of branding on it and then released it on the same day. So that's as close to a joint news release that we could get. And that was the first time that our local governments had ever partnered on one. So for a news release to get out to the public, it has to be picked up by a news outlet and broadcast. And it was picked up by online, waste360.com, and also by local newspaper. And one of the things that we learned was that the collaboration was very appealing to media outlets. And we think that's because the message spoke to the media outlets audience, which in this case was the entire Tampa Bay region. And also that the fact that we were collaborating for the first time in the history of our departments was news in and of itself. So even though we worked together on a focused regional campaign, this didn't replace our existing public education outreach programs. Here are just a few examples of the varied recycling communication pieces that our programs use. It was and is important to each of our departments and our communications teams to maintain our respective identities and branding, and to continue working on our own communication efforts. Each partner will continue to engage with our residents based on what works best for our distinctive programs and in light of our respective budgets and priorities. And we continue to identify opportunities where it makes sense to work together on focused campaigns and messaging when there are singular issues impacting all of us. And of course, around certain times of the year that generate common questions from the public, like what to recycle around the holidays. Okay, so the Tangler campaign, these were some of the statistics that we had. We spent a total of $190,000, and that was generated by print ads and 9 different publications, as you can see there. We had a 14-week-long campaign, and we reached about 2 million residents across the region. And we also have a system in place now to make it more seamless to work together on other outreach opportunities. So we worked through some growing pains. And as far as lessons learned and successes, we'd say the best part about this, the first campaign, was that it was the first time, as we said, all 4 municipalities worked together in a single campaign, and that collaboration was very appealing. Also, some of the lessons we learned, one of the greatest lessons was to increase the timeline for review. Because we have 4 different municipalities and each one has its own policies, chain of command, extra time, we learned that extra time should be allotted for those reviews and approvals. We also learned to educate your marketing and communication teams about what you're working on and the benefits of what those are. For example, in maybe larger municipalities, your PIO, public information officers, they may be the ones that are receiving call from the media, and that's an opportunity for them to educate and talk up the project. And then lastly, be willing to say yes and to let go. And you don't want to delay progress by getting bogged down in unnecessary details. You may need to compromise. If you can live with a design or a concept that one of your partners has proposed, and you don't have a strong opinion, say yes. On the other hand, if you do have a strong opinion and you have some great ideas, be willing to share them. And sometimes really great ideas come from working together in groups. For example, the first Tampa Bay Recycles campaign, Keep Recycling Bag Free, that was a really great idea that came from Hillsborough County.
Awesome. Wow, amazing information that you have for us, Stephanie. Appreciate it so much. Great work being done in the Tampa Bay region. And I was so excited to see the way you all work together to really have those responses ready for your social media teams. That was great. So the community not only had them ready, but what you were saying was consistent again across communities. So no one was able to call you out and say, well, this is what so-and-so said, which was for some reason different. So great job.
Oh, thank you, Lita.
Thank you. And I want to take just a second and see if there's any questions on anything that we have already discussed. We've had a lot of information coming at you, so please feel free to put those questions in your Q&A if you have any for us. And I'll just check in really quick with Trisha here to see if she has anything coming in. Anything on your end for questions, Trisha?
I do have some things coming in. We have a chat from Kayla Alm. Hi, Kayla. How has the recycling rate changed before and after the education campaign?
That's a great question for Stephanie. I will let her go ahead and answer that.
Yeah, that is a great question. I would say that probably the next recycling rate is coming out July 1st of this year. So we haven't seen what it is for calendar year 2018. So that is still coming up. And one of the things that we talk about amongst the partners is how do you know that this campaign is having an effect? It's a little hard to measure the behavior, but one of the things that we've all noticed is that residents, when we're talking to them, they all seem to know that plastic bags don't belong in recycling, which is definitely a sea change behavior that we had known before. And we use that star screen from the MRFs to illustrate how plastic bags get tangled. And that seems to be an education point that's really taken hold. So I'm sorry I can't directly answer your question about the rate, but hopefully that's helpful.
Thanks, Stephanie. Donald, I'm gonna I'll allow you to talk here, and let's see if we can unmute you. Do we have you, Donald? One more time.
I'm not hearing him on our end, Tricia. Maybe he can write in the question. We're more than happy to hear from him and would love to answer the question, just not hearing him.
Yeah, but chat just came through. He's asking, Stephanie, can you reiterate the communities involved in your regional campaign?
Yes, of course. So it is Pinellas County, and these are all in Florida, Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, City of Tampa, and City of St. Petersburg.
Is Clearwater involved? Were they in either of the counties that you mentioned?
That's a really good question, because I neglected to mention that City of Clearwater and City of Dunedin both join on as what we call promotional partners. So they are joining as using the collateral or the products that the campaign develops and putting their logos on it and sharing in their communities. And one of the things we had talked to them about was just that review process by adding more and more partners becomes sort of cumbersome. So they were more than happy to join as promotional partners, and that's working really well because they can target their community with their social media messaging and so forth.
So how does the promotional partner differ from the core four, if you will?
Yes, so the difference is that the core four, somebody will develop a campaign. It can either be with the marketing and communications team in one municipality, and then they develop the messaging, and then they put that product out to the partners, and the partners take that back. They bring in their marketing team and then their chain of command with their management, and then they give input, and then the originating partner revises that product based on the input and kind of comes to an agreement on of all the collaborative comments, and then adjusts it and then sends out the final product. So it takes a while, if you can imagine, for that to go up and down the chains.
Yeah, but really important for that consistency. Thanks, Stephanie. A further question just came in regarding your comments from Cassie Bradley. Can you elaborate more on how you handled and responded to negative comments or responses to your campaign, and how did you keep control of the message?
That's a good question. So there were a lot of, there could be questions, about, well, why can't you recycle these things? Why don't you adjust the equipment to handle, say, plastic bags? And so, and City of Tampa was really good about this because they got a lot of comments, but they continuously kind of took that feedback immediately, framed it in a positive response, and then kind of were pretty frank about, what they could and couldn't do, but what the resident can do to help. So, I mean, I really enjoyed reading. I think that initial social media push, they had like 300 comments, all about recycling, and you can see residents really engaging. And I mean, it was robust, as we said, but it was just constantly staying positive, being frank, giving the residents the benefits of the behavior, the desired behavior that you wanted, and kind of being real with them about the limitations of what you could do.
That's great. Another question just came in from Patty Lynn. How did you get the local governments to spend $190,000, or was it from another source?
That's a good question. So that was a combined amount. So what we started doing by the second campaign was we would all share our costs and our reach and our, like if it's social media, our impressions, and if it was print ads or billboards, we would combine our reach. So that was the combined amount. And I will say everybody has different budgets and everybody has different priorities. So like for the initial campaign, that was really hosted or sponsored by Hillsborough County. They put the initial investment into it of $60,000. That's what they budgeted for. And of course, they have a huge population. I think we said like 1.4 million people. So it was really a combined, combined budget. And these are large municipalities, large local governments, and we tell all of our, in Pinellas, we have 24 municipalities. We would offer those products to all of our municipalities to put their own logos on, because not everybody has the same budget or population. So that's why you're seeing that probably higher dollar amount, is because those were the largest kind of municipalities.
Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah. Jennifer just asked us a question regarding WTE. Not all states consider WTE recycling. Do you know what the rate is of materials which actually went to the MRF, not WTE, for recycling?
So our traditional rate, now this isn't just went to the MRFs, but it was about 55%, both 2016 and 2017, but that includes C&D, construction and demolition debris. If I had to pull out just what went to the MRFs, I'd have to look it up as far as tonnage and then what rate that would actually be. But our traditional rate includes, ferrous, non-ferrous metals, things like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wonderful job. What an awesome campaign.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the questions from everyone. Great questions out there. We're going to go ahead and move on with just a few more tools and resources that we have for you. So I want to make sure we share these and let folks know the tools and resources that the Recycling Partnership has available to you, starting with one of our new, most exciting CART grants. So our CART RFP is pretty standard for us. We have been helping bring CART to communities for some time now, but this year our CART grant has really increased its flexibility to allow for more communities to apply for the grant. And also we've increased our funding on this. So we are now allotting up to $15 a cart for this. And of course we do have caps on that, and you can find more about that CART grant and the new RFP on our webpage. And then additionally, we have our anti-contamination kit, which includes info cards, oops tags, icons, magnets, and other ways to communicate to your residents about contamination. And tools for recycling with cards, so a CART guide, the grants, as I mentioned, and free art files, free open source art files that are available to everyone for use. And I should say that when a community works with us to bring carts to their residents, we also work side by side on education as well. So it's not just about giving them the infrastructure, it's really about bringing the education to the community also. And if you are on our webpage, you can find for communities, we have our resources listed there, along with our campaign builder. And this is where a community can go in and build their own materials that are unique to them with their own information, so that they can educate their residents and have something available to them to use that doesn't require too much design, and it doesn't require too much of a lift. And so that is everything that we have for you today. Thank you so much for, again, joining us today. I just want to recap on a few things that we talked about. First and foremost, we know that there's residents out there, and we know people are out there who absolutely want to recycle and find recycling to be very important. And they are confused about what to recycle. And it is our goal to cut through the clutter and make sure we are getting a clear and concise message to them, like Stephanie is doing in Pinellas County with that great message of, do not bag your materials, keep bags out of recycling, keep tanglers out, and showing specifically what those tanglers are. It's great work being done there. We also know that we need to reach our residents through all different platforms, and that good old mail is actually a great way for us to reach our residents. So just want to make sure to we recap all of those ideas moving forward. And up on the screen now, you see contact information for both the lovely Miss Stephanie Watson with Pinellas County and for myself with the Recycling Partnership. And now we are going to be standing by here and taking any remaining questions that we have. For those of you who don't have questions, feel free to go back to eating your lunch or doing what you were. And hopefully we will have you join us for our next webinar that we will be hosting actually in July, where we'll be talking about plastic film. So any questions, feel free to chat those on over at this time. And thanks again for joining us today. And thank you, Stephanie, for joining us.
Thank you, Recycling Partnership, for having me.
Any questions there on your end, Tricia?
Alita, we got nothing coming in. You've done a great job. You and Stephanie did a great job of giving us a great overview here. For those of you who are wondering, the recording will be made available online within 24 hours of us finishing this presentation. So with that, I'll go ahead and stop recording.